Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Have a play in the kitchen. It's a dull, miserable day, and I haven't got anything to do in the grow room today, really. What I needed to do, I've done. So I thought we'll get this Miltoniopsis potted up. So I'm just getting the plant. Before I start, I'm feeling self-conscious now, because when I went to the RHS show, after a tedious journey to get there and arriving late, I'd only just got off the coach and I got accosted by Oliver and his good lady wife, and a nice long chat before we went in. But we were talking about the different types of videos and, you know, the way people present themselves on YouTube and things like that. And he commented that I was suitably dressed for Roger. Scruffy pair of jeans, any old shirt that was handy. And he did comment that, he said, "We know your hands and your shirts and your belt and your feet intimately, but we don't know your face." Which is the way I like to keep it, by the way. But yeah, I'm now self-conscious to make sure I've, you know, got my hands clean and got a belt on and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I like to stay out of my videos. It's my way. Anyway, this Miltoniopsis was a gift, nicely wrapped up and left for me to collect at the RHS show. Left with Arthur of Burnham's and donated kindly by Lena, whichever way she says it. And she was worried that it had lousy roots. Well, I've seen a hell of a lot worse than that. I really have. I mean, we've got active roots here. There's no real green growing tips. There's one there, but nonetheless these are active roots, and they're, you know, coming out from the base of the plant in a sensible place. And there are a few not so good roots, yes. Well, that's a Miltoniopsis. To get a Miltoniopsis with every root brilliant is pretty rare. But anyway, this is a division, so it's come off another plant. So it will have stored energy from the bulk of the plant that it had. Tied it over for a little while perhaps. But nonetheless, there's a plenty good enough root system on there to get it going. I haven't trimmed many off at all. I don't need to. I mean, some of these, they're not all soggy and papery. They might look a browny colour, but they're firm. So I'm not going mad stripping off loads of roots and accidentally knocking off some good ones. I'm steaming it at the moment, holding it above my coffee. So it's not a bad plant. It's got 3 plump pseudobulbs, and they are plump. There's no wrinkling or anything on them. They're good sturdy pseudobulbs and this nice new growth. So all I've done to prepare this plant is this leaf and this leaf were both coming round here, right over the top of that new growth. Well, I know from previous experience, if you leave it like that, the roots will push up, like these have done in the past. And they end up being aerial roots, and aerial roots on Miltoniopsis don't tend to last long. They just dry out too much. So they end up dying back and losing their tips. And the best roots you can get are the ones that go straight down into the media. And quite honestly, if you get a media that the plant's happy with and an environment that's good to grow it in, they can grow like weeds. Get it wrong and they'll not thrive. They're fussy ones. Cat's just come in. So anyway, what I've done is I've cleared the base of this new growth so that when it decides to push its new roots out, they can go straight down. But apart from that, I haven't done much preparation apart from spraying the whole of the base of the plant with the hydrogen peroxide. The lady was worried that at some point she may have had thrips. If you get them, they are a bit of a pain, but they like to be outside really. But if they get a good environment inside and you've got open windows and doors and stuff like that, they will come in. And they love to get hold of your orchids, and they're not that easy to shift if you get a plague of the flipping things. But outside they have good years and bad years, and luckily they don't have good years very often. So they're not in high populations outside, so the frequency of them coming in and getting at your orchids is obviously low when there's not many of them. Anyway, we'll get this one in a pot. It may need staking, I don't know, till I get it in there. I've got a pot that the roots are going to be quite tight in. That's deliberate. I don't want excess media that can end up going soggy because the roots don't use up the the moisture and the tiny little bit of feed that it will get. You get too much build-up of salts and things around roots on these and they die. So very sensitive roots, very prone to breaking. Quite honestly, apart from the pretty blooms, these plants haven't got a lot going for them. They're not easy. They can cause more problems than many other types of orchids. But anyway, I've crocked the bottom. It is an air cone pot. And I always say that, you know, if you clog up your air cone with small media and moss, then you just as well not have an air cone pot. So I've crocked the bottom, and we'll mix up some mix. I've got my small size bark. A lot of people call it seedling bark. I just call it small. I need some air around these roots, but they also like to stay moist. So if I put larger size bark in there, there's a lot more air and it will dry much faster. And you know, it's only got to be overcooked by me, either through neglect or being busy doing something else, and it dries off completely, and it's not going to do it any good. So by having the smaller bark, it'll stay wet longer. It just does. You know, the large chunky bark dries out in half a day. Certainly when it's brand new anyway. So, so I'm just looking for bits of grass and bits of wood. Don't want that in there if I can help it. There's a lot more stuff in this new Orchiata bark than I've got that shouldn't be there. So it does need picking over a little bit. That'll do. There's nothing major in there that shouldn't be. I'm going to add some moss, but again, I don't want too much because I don't want these roots staying soggy wet. Evenly moist is the goal, which is, I've always said, it's almost impossible, because when you water it, it's soggy. The idea is when you water it, the excess water gets out of the pot pretty quick, so good drainage. And having the crocking in the bottom, you know, means that you don't get that soggy wet layer in the bottom that you get if the air can't get in there, until the roots become fully established, of course. So I want some moss in here, but I don't want an excess. I don't want these roots staying soggy. And I've never admitted to knowing a ratio or proportions or anything with this moss to bark stuff. It's a guess and a feel, and it's just a matter of when it's mixed up, you just sort of get a feel for it. And the idea is I tear my moss up so that it's more evenly distributed, and if you get big lumps of moss in the pot, then that bit will stay wet. And if you get large areas of bark with no moss, that bit's going to dry fast. So by making the moss bit smaller, you get an even mix, where it all stays as close as you can get to evenly moist. As I say, that's almost impossible. Nonetheless, I only want a tiny layer on the bottom, not much at all. Right, and then the back end of the plant, as tight to the edge of the pot as I can get it, so that the new growth and any subsequent new growths have got a place to be. And what I do is I know I want the plant there, so I start there. And it might sound daft, but it means I can get some of my mix down the back of the plant, not fill it right up to the top, just down the back, and then I can push my root ball into that and get the plant where I want it. Now I haven't got to disturb the other side of that pot, it's already got its media. Now all I've got to do is front fill. And I don't want air gaps on this one, I want all these roots in the media. So the way to do that is not to put too much in, and then wiggle it around so that you can see it's gone into all the gaps. And once you've filled up all the gaps, you can add some more. And the mix that's going in where the bulk of the roots are will have the higher percentage of moss. And when I've got it down and firmed it, not squashed it, firmed it, these are delicate roots, then I'm going to top fill the pot with virtually no moss. And that way the base of the plant doesn't stay wet, gets a chance to dry off. So almost pure bark near the top, very little moss. And the base of the plant, a fraction into the media. You don't want the base of the plant sat halfway up the pseudo-bulbs and staying wet, because it could start some rot off. Funny, it's you fill your pot up to the level you think. I think I can get away without staking that good. Because in these smaller pots the stakes don't hang in there very well anyway. And then you press a bit more media down, and then you find you can get some more media in. And then you press that down, you can get some more in. Oh good. Almost guaranteed no air gaps. Now that's about it. You don't really want that any deeper than that. The back pseudo bulb is a little submerged, but it's sat in bark, not in moss. And that's about the right level for that. Base of the plant just into the media, not halfway up. And not hanging out the top either, because if it hangs out the top it won't sit in the media, it'll wobble. So it's just a balancing act of getting that roughly at the right level. Don't know why I bother tapping this small size bark. The easiest way to settle the bark in a pot like this is water it. The water will settle it down. But that's quite reasonable. That's not moving much at all. I'm happy with that. So yeah, that just needs a water. That'll serve two purposes. It will settle the media down, and any dust that's in the Orchiata bark comes straight out the bottom. A little more may come out next time I water it, but that'll be it. Any dust that's in there over two waterings will be washed out. And I always pot dry. I know my moss is damp, but I always use dry bark. I've found that if I use wet bark, it sticks to my fingers, it sticks to the outside of the pot, it sticks to the roots, it makes getting in between the roots more and more difficult. Now I find it's much easier to use dry bark and water it in. I just work that way over the years. It's just, I find it easier. Yep, so we got a good mix there. We got no air gaps. We got a bit of moss around where the roots are going to grow, and the base of the plant has got virtually no moss, just bark. So it'll stop the base of the plant getting soggy. So there we go. That is a yellow Miltoniopsis. Not easy to get hold of in the EU. Common as muck in the States, you lucky people, which is where I kept seeing pictures of them. And I thought, must have, I want. Despite these being fussy things to grow in my environment. Trouble is, it gets too warm for them in my grow room in the summer months. And it stresses them. So I'm hoping that this one's got time to just settle some roots in, get that new growth going a bit better, and start some root progress before it gets to that point where I know it's going to get stressed. Although nowadays I've got an area that is under the constant flow of fans, which does keep the temperatures down and keeps the leaves cool. That's the important bit. If these things heat up, they're thin, they're fragile, they heat up, they wilt. So we'll see how we go with that one, and updates will follow when there's something to see. But the next thing I want to see is that growth pushing on at a reasonable rate and new roots coming out from that area. That's what I'm hoping for in the near future, and the sooner the better before we get into summer. So there we go, a yellow Miltoniopsis, and thank you very much for the present, greatly appreciated. And I hope it does well. I mean, there's a few signs of dehydration in the past, but very little. You know, there's a little bit of a crinkle on that leaf. A little bit there, but that's next to nothing, you know. I mean, as I said, I've bought Miltoniopsis in a far worse state than that. You don't find that out till you get them home and take them out of the pot. So happy with that one, and I'm pleased I didn't have to stake it. So there we go, a little bit of kitchen time. I haven't got a clue when I'm going to post this. I'll use this as a background video, so when I haven't got anything else particularly that I film or I haven't got time, I've just got one to pop up. So see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.